also join. But before that, I'm going to tell you a bit about Eitayo, Coach Eitayo. You know, I shared something about her in the group earlier, and I don't know if every one of us read about Coach earlier. So I will just do a brief while we wait for the other people to join us as well. We will do a brief on Coach and tell us who we're bringing. You know, we always bring you the people who know exactly what it is that they are giving. One of the major things that you want to know about Coach Eitayo is that she is a professional. Our trainer holds a BSc and an MSc in psychology. So if you're looking for that one person who actually, you know, will guide you through when it comes to everything psychology, you are already here at the right place. And then we also would like to know that she's a certified life coach. She's a member of the Life Coaches Association of Nigeria. She has a master's in psychology and a BSc in psychology. So of course, you know that we are in for something this morning. And then she also currently serves as the Chief Operating Officer, the COO of NIRA, Nigeria Internet Registration Association. She spends her time running Whetstone Coaching, where she supports especially women for mental health. Coach Eitayo is very big on mental health, very, very big. So we're welcoming Coach Eitayo Iyotin to this class this morning. Like I said earlier, I was having a bit of a lag, so I am hoping to have sent, as soon as we start, we'll send the links out and then we get more people to join. Thank you, ma'am, for being here, and you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. God bless you. Thank you very much. Do I have a delay or you can hear me clearly?
So you can go on, ma'am.
All right.
You can hear me, okay. Then you can go on, ma'am.
I can hear you clearly. So good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here. Thank you, yes. Wendy.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's an honor to be here. And I think that, you know, it's nice to hear all the accolades, but actually the one that qualifies me the most interestingly is that in addition to all that, I've also been a single mother. And right now I'm parenting alone again. So it's not just from a theoretical perspective that I help single parents. It's also from the practical perspective, because I have a 28-year-old, a 15-year-old, and a 10-year-old. So yes, so I've also, you know, I've also felt what it is like to parent alone. And when I started the academy, I honestly didn't imagine the kind of feedback that I would get. I knew that a lot of single parents, particularly mothers, really needed help, and many of them were battling their own personal issues, and you know, they couldn't get it. They couldn't get it. So it wasn't just. It now became like really a formal kind of mentoring kind of thing. So this morning, I've been asked by the Intentional Parents Academy to talk about guilt and dealing with issues of guilt when you're a single parent. And I'll see how much justice I can do to that. So first of all, I'll start by saying that parenting in itself is more about you than it is about your child. So if you have been on the intentional parenting group for a while, then you've heard Coach Wendy say it over and over again. If you don't work on yourself, you're never going to be that parent that you imagine. Now, we hear a lot of people come and when they bring their kids to me and they say, oh, I'm having issues with this teenager, there's a problem. I always start from, how are you parenting? How are you parenting? And most of the time, when we go back, there's a lot of guilt, anger, bitterness, strife in the life of the parent. And this clouds their ability to parent properly. One of the points that I start from is fault versus responsibility. Now, for many of us single parents, we think in terms of, oh, I must have been bad, or maybe I offended God. I don't know who I offended, and even when your child is going through something that you should actually support the child through, you're so busy thinking about how that relates or how that tells about your own challenges with parenting, or what that reveals about what you're going through, that you don't focus on the challenges that the child is having. So really, there's no success about parenting. There's no parental success if you do not, first of all, deal with your individual success. So when we talk about guilt, it's a huge part of the anger that parents feel. So I'll just digress a little and tell you about anger. So anger is like an iceberg. The tip that you see above the water is just a little teeny weeny bit of the true size of the iceberg, if you understand how icebergs work. So anger is considered an iceberg. And what is under anger is a combination of all kinds of things. Now, for single parents in particular, what is under anger is composed of a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, a lot of regrets, and a lot of wishes. And you know what they say, if wishes were horses, beggars would ride, yeah? So when you think about parenting and you think about single parenting, what comes to your mind is, most of the time, is, oh my God, it has to work out right. Oh, the child has to turn out perfect. Or if the child doesn't turn out perfect, then they're going to say something about my parenting, and so on and so forth. And we forget to actually work, so we mouth a lot and we forget to do the work. So this morning, I want to discuss about how much work you need to do in terms of guilt, in terms of shame, in terms of fault finding, and in terms of taking responsibility. So first of all, how do people get to parent alone? How does it happen? Various reasons why you're parenting alone. Separation, divorce, and widowhood, or, well, the death of a spouse comes at the top of one of the reasons why you're parenting alone. But there are also people who are parenting alone because of work. Like, I know someone at the moment whose husband is stuck in another country, and she's been parenting alone for the last 2 months. And because he's there doing a course, she's going to be parenting alone for a while. So when we think about the guilt, I think it's more about what the society has told us about single parents. Now, every time you introduce, let's talk about PTA, for example. You go to PTA from time to time, and then you introduce yourself as a single parent. People look at you like, oh yes, so she's sexually irresponsible. So she had a child out of wedlock. So she's, loose. So she's, and so on and so forth. Just a lot of judgment. And sometimes single parents take that judgment to heart. We do not remember all our journeys and how different they actually are. And we take these judgments to heart. I want to talk again about one particular group of single parents, people who ran out of a relationship. And I use the word intentionally. They ran for their dear lives. And then the society still makes them guilty because they're having to parent alone. So no matter what the reason is that you are parenting alone, I want to talk to you about moving from your own emotional baggage so that you can successfully parent. Because really, in order to successfully parent alone, you have to be able to deal with your own baggage. You have to say, I am moving from here. So how do we deal with these issues? How do we practically deal with the issues? So I've mentioned a few of them, people's perception. I'll tell you what, in terms of people's perception, here's what I have learned. You be the judge, the greatest judge of what you do. If you focus on having the right motives, the right reasons, the right perception, the right drive, you will find that when people comment on the things that you do, you're not too bothered because you took your time to take a decision. You took your time to really decide to do what you're doing. It wasn't just off the whim, off the cuff, kind of decision. You actually thought about what you are doing, and so it's like having a buffer. So when people come, because you didn't take the decision on a whim, because you didn't just take the decision, without deep thoughts. When people come, you have that factor that you thought about it deeply, that you really planned this activity or this action. So you don't have that sense of needing to explain. So for me, that's a low-hanging fruit. In terms of what people will say, that's the first thing that single parents need to deal with. How to deal with it is to be intentional. So everything you do as a parent is intentional. So you are not about to fall for, oh, she's only doing this because. Now, if you are not intentional, then when people say, oh, he or she is only doing this because, then there's a tendency for you to feel that guilt, that pressure to explain yourself, and you take it out on the child, back to the anger iceberg. So parents of children of single parents get a lot of the brunt of anger, and it is built out of this thing. So let me talk about guilt, about shame, about not finding fault, and about taking responsibility as major issues that single parents have to deal with, no matter the reason why they are parenting alone. Now, in the first and second cohorts of the Single Parents Academy that I run, we actually had widows. Now, can you imagine trying to blame a widow for parenting alone? But then we make widows need to explain that they are widows to kind of get out of the societal perception, which is so wrong. But unfortunately, it's so in our society, there's not much we can do. So how do I deal with issues of guilt? How do I deal with issues of it? Now, guilt says it's my fault. Guilt says, oh my God, I've messed up. Guilt says, oh, this is how I always mess up. Guilt says, I can do no better. Guilt says, oh, now everybody will blame me. Guilt says, I don't even know how I got here. Guilt says a lot of things in our minds. And as I'm saying it, I don't know if you can identify with some of those feelings, with some of those things that guilt says to you. Guilt holds us back. So for example, you have somebody who's interested in, having a relationship with you. And because of guilt, you don't think that you deserve to be happy. So guilt takes away our sense of deservedness in terms of what life, hits us with. And so people are not able to move forward. Really, single parents are so held back by guilt. Now, one of the best ways to start to deal with guilt is to do a reflective session. Now, not everyone will be able to do a good reflective session without help from a life coach or a psychologist. I would advise you to go to a psychologist, a therapist, somebody who's qualified, so that you can also deal with the other issues that are behind your feelings of guilt or your feelings of shame. But guilt needs to be dealt with. So that reflective piece says, this is what happened. This is my role in what happened. Now, I'll give you an example. A person went through domestic violence. Before she had the bad episode of domestic violence, her spouse, and I'm talking about a woman, had been shouting, shoving, pushing, and the woman stayed. And she didn't move, she didn't leave, she stayed. Because she stayed, one day, he actually did beat her, dragged her on the ground in front of children and all that. Now, the woman needs to accept, she needs to take responsibility for the fact that she did not leave, she did not extricate herself from that situation when she should have. She needs to take responsibility that she delayed action. She needs to take responsibility because of procrastination. So it is important for you to take responsibility for being in the situation that you are in. If you were like I was 19 and I had my first child and I was just a rebellious teenager, that was it. So I have since taken responsibility and recognized rebellion for what it is. And so if I don't deal with the rebellion, then it's going to be very difficult to keep the time, to be disciplined about things. You would always go off on a handle, on a whim, based on how you feel. So I feel like I should go and do a movie, and I cannot critically take responsibility for what it means in terms of COVID-19 and everything that is going on. So the first place to start with dealing with guilt is taking responsibility. And the way to do that is to reflect and to ask yourself. Look, I mean, some people, some of my clients would come and say, oh, no, I did nothing wrong. I did everything correct. If he said this, I gave it to him. If he made a request, I responded to him. I did nothing. And then I'd say, well, that attitude of servitude was something. And then they keep quiet because they realize that all the while they were trying to please somebody who was not going to be pleased by their actions. So you see, taking responsibility is not taking blame, please. They're not the same. And it is not being guilty. They're not the same. It is saying, this is the role that I played. This is what I did. This is how I could have. Okay, so that's the next step. So after you reflect and you take responsibility for where you are. So many of us have not grown. I meet a lot of single mothers who became single mothers in their teens and have subsequently become single mothers again because they didn't take responsibility for the first time. So they just continued along that path. And, sometimes it can be really challenging moving on from the guilt of things like having an abortion, of things like, of giving up a child for adoption. So, oh my goodness, single parents go through a lot. There's a whole gamut of what they go through. You don't need to add guilt to that bucket of what you would go through already because of the society that you live in and the expectations from that society. So single parenting and guilt should be very, very far. Otherwise, a single parent cannot succeed. Guilt impedes your ability to judge correctly. Now, I'll tell you another place that guilt affects us, in discipline. When you need to enforce discipline, for example, I have had reason to withhold television in my home because the boys didn't do something that they were supposed to do. Now, for some single parents, the fact that, if their father had been here or if their mother had been here, depending, she would allow them to do this. I just have to allow them so they don't think that it's because I'm now doing it alone. Oh my goodness. Guilt impedes your capacity to provide the adequate guidance and protection that discipline provides. Now, guilt makes you also effect discipline that is unnecessarily hard. And I remember when I was much younger and, when I had only just my first son, I was extremely hard on him. Now we're both adults, we can have the discussions and laugh. But I have had to really sit back and find the reason why I needed him to turn out, because everybody said that the child will not turn out well and that I would not turn out well. And so in order to ensure, he had to be tops in terms of his books, he had to dress well, to speak well, proper etiquette, everything needed to be perfect. And I must have taken out a lot on the child. I did, not I must have, I must take responsibility. I did. I took out a lot on the child. Now, things are different now, but I am able to reflect and identify where I could have made a difference and I didn't, where I could have stopped and I didn't. At the point where you start to respond, I hope that all of you have a copy of The Discipline That Works, written by Wendy. I hope you all have a copy because it will help single parents. You have to have a copy. You have to drill yourself and you have to learn. And you have to have a copy of discipline that works. Whoever is showing in my video, please go away. You have to have a copy of the discipline that works. Now, the discipline that works talks about you not taking out anger on your child. Now, can you imagine when you are a single parent and you have guilt and shame and all that, can you imagine how much anger is in every time that you discipline, if you discipline in anger? If you discipline in response, in direct reaction to what the child has done, these are real issues and they need to be dealt with. I have had a single parent cut her daughter's hand and put pepper in it. And she just didn't know what to do because the girl was stealing. And she wasn't just stealing from her. She was also stealing from neighbors. And this woman in desperation, pardon me. And this woman, pardon me. And this woman actually cut this girl's hand. And unfortunately, she cut it too deep. And the girl lost a lot of blood. And we lost this girl. And it was guilt, and it was anger, and it was anger that was laced with guilt and with shame and with a lack of self-control. So when we talk about guilt and the need for you to deal with guilt, to deal with shame in yourself, in order for you to be able to parent properly, it is not something that we joke with, and we're not playing lip service to it. Now, there are other major issues, and I said I'll talk about guilt, I'll talk about shame. I want to talk about shame now. Now, shame breeds guilt. Guilt breeds shame. So it's kind of a very horrible mix. It's really, for want of a better word, it's a really, really terrible mix of guilt and shame. Now, the question is, what exactly are you ashamed about? Now, this is what I used to say, because I also do a bit of marriage counseling on the side. And sometimes, when couples come and they state the problem, I like to ask the question, what is the real problem? What is it that you are actually ashamed of? Or what is it that bothers you? And when we drill, and sometimes it can take really many, many sessions of therapy, when we drill down, we find that there's an embarrassment. There's a sense of an inadequacy. There's a sense of not being up to standard or up to par, up to a certain expectation that people think. And that is a major, major factor in shame and in guilt. So our society has huge expectations, particularly for women. I know. It doesn't matter, for example, what happened to you. I went through domestic violence. It doesn't matter what happened to you. People judge that you need to stay in an abusive relationship just because you need to be in a relationship because of the shame of not being in a relationship. Long term, the effects on the child are very negative. And I need everybody who's watching this video to go and do some serious research about the effect of observing violence and observing assault in the development of a child. And then you'd start to see that our mothers and our forefathers didn't understand the psychology of growing up. And so even now, we have an entire generation, my generation, who grew up with mothers who lived with abuse, and they're not able to move on, and they don't understand why they have those challenges. Do you know how many things your mother told you are shameful? I don't know if your parents use that word. Don't bring shame to the family. Please don't bandy words like that around your children. Shame is serious, serious business, very serious business. Please don't bandy words like that around your children. Shame and guilt are negative emotions. Again, emotional intelligence comes to play in successful single parenting. You recognize by now that I'm putting a concise overview of the content of the entire academy so that you have an idea of the amount of work that you need to do. I can talk for the next 3 hours, and you can have sessions with me all day for the next year. If you are not willing to work, if you're not willing to make the necessary changes, if you're not willing to accept responsibility, not guilt, not shame, not fault, responsibility for your role in where you are, and ready to build a plan to move forward. If you are not ready on all those points, then you shouldn't bother. And then you should be ready for children who will turn out exactly how the society has told you that they will turn out. So a single parent is angry, takes out her or her anger or his anger constantly on the children. The children grow up in fear, in shame. They cannot have conversations with their parents, and so they grow up without proper guidance, and they get into trouble, and it comes back. And then what the society has said actually starts to come to pass. So the issues that we have with single parenting are more parenting issues than children issues. They are more parenting than children issues. So I think that actually is what you need to just write. It's a parenting issue. It is just a parenting issue, yeah? It's a parenting challenge. Never mind that you're parenting alone or you're parenting with somebody. It's a parenting challenge. So Wendy's always saying on the group that you need to work on your parenting, on you as the individual in order to parent well. Well, that's what I'm saying here as well. It doesn't matter whether you're a single parent or whether you're a parent, whether you're co-parenting or whether you're actually in a relationship and the children are growing in a home with the two of you. Whichever one you are doing, unless you deal with the issues that you have, unless you deal with the challenges that you have, you will not be able to parent successfully. And this will affect the outcome of your children. Now, I want to talk about another area in our particular society. So a lot of examples I'm giving are very particular or are very relevant in the Nigerian society. This is where I live and this is where I work. So I want to talk about the financial aspect of what guilt does. I'm still talking about guilt and shame and the negativity and faults. And I want to talk about what it does when it comes to finances. So because people are parenting alone and they want the child to have the perception that everything is okay, they want the child to feel like, nothing has changed. They bend over backwards. They don't do proper financial planning. They bend over backwards to continue to provide what was being provided when there were two parents doing it together. And they get into trouble. And so they provide, and at some point, as the children grow and as expenses grow and as things start to change, at some point, they can no longer cope. So when the kids are in primary school, sometimes it's easier because all you're doing is lunch, school fees, notebooks maybe, but not that major. When they get to high school, suddenly you're having to do sportswear, cultural day, the expenses increase. And when they get to campus, then suddenly you're paying for research, you're paying for so many things. And so what you need to continue to provide starts to change. And as it changes, if your attitude has always been, oh, I'm going to provide everything, it doesn't matter what happens, it doesn't matter, what's going on. If that continues to be your attitude, then there will be a problem. There will be a problem. Now, let me tell you how this affects the children. So, when single parenting, so when you start, you feel like, oh, yes, it's fine. I can do this. I can continue. It's not a big deal. I will just work harder. As the children grow and the responsibilities increase and change, even the dynamics change, as they change, you start to get challenges that you were not prepared for. And heaven forbid that you now have a child who maybe has a challenge, any kind of challenge. It could be a learning disability, any kind of, challenge. So if you have a child that has that challenge, then you have even additional responsibility. So as the children grow and you're no longer able to provide it the way you were able to provide it at the beginning, they start to take it out on one, anybody that you might be having a relationship with at the time. Excuse me. So you could be having a relationship with someone, and at that particular point in time, because you're moving on. And as you're moving on, the children can link your not being able to provide certain things to, it was when this relationship started. So children get angry. And anger needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with. It needs to be dealt with decisively. So the children get angry and they stop listening. They think that you've lost the locus standi to parent them, because you're no longer providing as you used to provide. Now remember that you were bending over backwards to continue to meet the demand that was there. The children don't know this. So financial planning for single parent is different from that for a parent who is parenting with somebody else. One of the things you need to do is manage the expectations. So I'm talking about finances now, issues that single parents have, finances. Manage your own expectations and your expectations of yourself. Cut yourself some slack. You are now doing what two people were doing successfully. You're doing it alone. It takes a bit of time to settle in. During that time, you need to carry the children along. So single parents, I'm going to talk about the conversations we have with our children in a minute, but you need to carry your children along in a way that manages the expectations. I'm not asking you to transfer the guilt, because that's another thing that single parents do. We transfer the guilt. So, I'm alone now. Your father is not sending any money. So we have 30,000 and that's what we're going to manage. Don't do that. Don't do that. So 2 more things I'm going to talk about, and I'll get to them in a minute. So you need to manage your finances for yourself. You need to manage your own expectations of yourself. What can you afford? What can you afford? Make a plan, always. If you didn't have a stable job, you might want to consider, particularly if your business has not taken hold. If your business has already taken hold and you're doing extremely well, that's fine. You just change your plans. But if not, then you might need to consider paid employment in addition to your business, because that gives you predictable income. And for a single parent, predictable income is important. So you may want to consider, having that extra source of income, sources of income, and managing expectations. You may need to move. Maybe you were living in a duplex in the most expensive part of town. Maybe you need to move. For some people, they judge that the children need to stay in the schools that they were in. You might need to change their schools. These are painful decisions, but they're decisions that will guard the future. So let me now move to the conversations that single parents have with children. You must allow your children to be children. Please do not tell, and I get clients who come and tell me that no, I need the child to understand what a bad person the father is. You're not helping the child. You are not helping the child when you do that. So I need the child to understand how bad the father is. Really? How bad he was as a husband, how bad he was as a father to your children. Is that the relationship that he has with his children? Now, people change, and we must never we must never prevent people from having that benefit of the doubt. We mustn't, particularly between parents and their children. And this is particular because what now happens is that these mothers have fed these children a lot of negativity. And when the child is like 18, 19, 20, the child, deems that, okay, I've listened to you all this while. And you see, I now want to judge for myself. I want to go and I want to see what it's like. I want to really meet this person. And they go and they meet this father or mother who is just a perfect human being, who never gets angry, who doesn't have the burden that you have had over the years, who seems to be the perfect parent. And then they pack their bags and they, pitch their tent with the parent who's been absent all this while, and then anger sets in again. Oh dear, oh dear. So unless you deal with anger, really, and in order to deal with your anger, you have to look at guilt, shame, fault finding, blame games, negative speaking, involving your children in adult conversations where they have no business being, transferred aggression when you want to deal with the child because you want to cause the other parent who is absent pain, and so on and so forth. You have to be careful. I want to also talk about managing expectations. Now, people will talk about the issues that single parents have. And then when they come, when they register and we start, one of the things they start is, I don't even know how to deal with PTA. People keep asking me, where is his mother? Where is his mother? Or where is his father? Or where is her father? Where is her father? And I don't know what answer to give them. And I ask, why do you need to coin an answer? Have you asked yourself, why do you need to coin an answer? Why must you? And it is because the society has such huge, unmanageable, unrealistic expectations, and you allow those expectations to determine what you do, how you do, where you do it. Can you just live with the truth? Can you get used to being truthful, being honest? Because if you're parenting alone, you are parenting alone. And shame is a negative emotion. It shouldn't be part of the gamut of load that you have to carry. We've already talked about school fees, medical fees, all the other fees, rent, food, everything else you have to deal with. In addition to all that you have to deal with, you really shouldn't have to deal with coping, meeting societal expectations, trying to be to the society who they expect you to be. Before we go, and I'm looking at the time, I also want to touch on moving on. So there are two things that single parents are not doing enough. One is getting models, parenting models for their children. Both parents. Now, because you are parenting alone, you kind of embody father and mother, whether you like it or not, whether you plan to or not, whether it's conscious or not, you embody father and mother. And so the children don't have that, distinct model of mother or father in you. So when I speak with single parents, I tell them, find a model for yourself as well. So let your children have parent models, people who they can look up to. You can go get a life coach if you can afford it. My teenager has a life coach. Thank you, Coach Tosin. I don't know if he's online, but yeah, my teenager has a life coach and he does amazing. So you might want to go, to that extra length and get a professional. But what I'm talking about is more in terms of getting somebody who these children can look up to, particularly for the gender who's missing. So if you're parenting alone as a mother, then you're looking for father figures. Please try not to make it the figure that you are emotionally connected with. Please try. Don't make it a figure that you are emotionally connected with. Try and make it somebody that and when I'm talking about emotion, I mean that you're having a relationship with. So I hear it a lot, single parents say, they won't accept him, but he's going to be their father. They have to accept him. No, they don't. No, they don't. Again, think about it. What are you pushing? Fault or sense of responsibility? The important thing is that your children get, pardon me. The important thing is that your children get the example of parents, the example, the model of the gender that they are, and the model of the parents, both father and mother. And if you can succeed with this with your siblings, that's fine. I mean, you're also emotionally connected with your siblings, but that's not what I'm talking about. That's just what I want to clarify. So whichever way, whatever you think about, whatever you plan to do, you need to put into perspective that aspect of modeling. Who are your children watching? You? with all your negativity and all the anger and shame and regrets. Oh my goodness. One mother used to call her kids, and yes, I have a lot of mothering examples, to call her kids before we worked together, call her kids in the morning when she's really, really angry and start to curse them and start to tell them how it's because of them that she's here. That's the last thing I want to talk about. Blaming the children. So we've talked about yourself. Let's move to blaming the children. Whew. So I'm going to say some hard things here. And this is what I ask in the academy. Why are you parenting? Why did you become a parent? Why did you have a child? Why? Have you asked yourself? Why? For sure, none of you can respond and say, I received a phone call from a child stating that the child should please, that I should please, asking me to kindly give birth to them. Anyone? No one, I suppose. So you decided to have this child. You owe a responsibility to nurture and discipline this child until the child can come into their own adulthood. Let that sink in properly. Stop taking children on a guilt trip. Stop it already. They don't need it. You don't need it. It prepares you. It actually positions you for a life of guilt. For me, I make sure that every day I ask myself for everything that I do, and I'm not even just talking about parenting, I'm talking generally. For everything that you do, you ought to have reflection every day. You ought to have a time when you reflect and you ask yourself, what is this thing that I'm doing? Or what is this thing that I did? What was my reason? Is it justifiable? Does it fit in with my values? Does it fit in with who I am? If it doesn't and is not justifiable, then I need to stop it. How do I stop it? You need to have this conversation with yourself every day that you live. It's not I mean, pardon me, but you can't escape it. You can't escape it. You have to be able to do that. So you have to be able to say to yourself, this child did not ask to be born. Hard truth, but the truth. You got pregnant, had a baby, decided you would nurture the baby, kept the baby with you. You're nurturing the baby. I'm sorry, did I just lose? Oh no, sorry. I think I just had a network fluctuation. I apologize. Can you still see me, Wendy?
Yes, sure. You're here, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I apologize, everyone. It was just a glitch. Screen just went off. So I was saying that you have a responsibility to this child. You have a responsibility to the child. You have a responsibility to the child. The child has obligations, but those obligations are not enforced in anger or by negativity, or by speaking wrongly, or by making them guilty, or by giving them shame, or by embarrassing the children. All these factors do not work. What works is an intentional, focused, informed, knowledge-filled parenting that can be successful. I put it to you that you can be a successful single parent. You can have successful outcomes. Now, they're not the best outcomes. God's design always is for children to have a mother and a father, and for children to grow up in a home with a mother and a father. But things happen. The world happens. Events take place. They are out of our control. What we can do is control our responses to those things that happen. And I ask you today, how are you managing your responses to the things that have happened that have led to your parenting alone? And I can see Wendy coming up, so I'm sure she wants to maybe take a few questions. Wendy?
Yes. In fact, I was listening to this session and I was thinking this should not be for only single parents. even people who are parenting, together should also listen to this. I tell you my reason, ma. I have a few friends who their husbands are late, and I'm sure before now they were never prepared for what was coming. I am a believer of preparation. No matter how we want to shout, God forbid, which is the normal thing that we want to say, I usually say that God forbid is not a parenting strategy. So we can shout, God forbid, all we want, but what if it happens to us?
Yeah.
Are we prepared enough to be able to actually take this stride? Because you can become a single parent from what, in fact, it calls my attention from what you shared this morning, that you can become a single parent by circumstances,
Oh,
not
yes.
even circumstances that you make yourself.
Yeah.
By
Yeah.
So when we say single parenting, I think a lot of people look at it from the area of, oh, she must have had a child outside wedlock.
I know.
Oh,
Society.
nobody
Yeah.
thinks about the circumstances that are beyond you.
Yeah.
The fact that you don't even live with your spouse means you're parenting alone.
Yep.
So there are just too many angles to single parenting. And
Yeah.
I don't think I've given it this kind of deep thought. Well, I'm sure that's why you run the academy, the single parenting academy. I have never given it this kind of deep thought as far these are the things that that we need to. And then beyond that also is also, calling my attention to the fact that I might also at some point have a daughter who becomes a single parent at some point. How prepared am I to be able to lead that child to be able to do things properly? So there's just so much to the angle. So maybe we shouldn't have restricted this class to only single parents. We should have said every parent should actually attend just in case, so that we all be equipped for whatever it is that is coming. So, ma, you might actually have to be here for a little bit more minutes, because I also have questions that I would like you to deal with,
No
at
problem. Go ahead.
this topic. So, ma, I would like to ask, do you think that the problem is more on the single parent parenting right, or parenting the way they should, or do you think it's about the knowledge that they should get? What I mean is, do you think there's a lot of knowledge gap as regards single parents, parenting? Do you think they constantly don't think that they do not need some kind of guidance? What do you think the major challenge is, parenting alone? I know you've spoken about guilt, I know you've spoken about shame, but is that really, do we have a problem of, knowledge in this whole setting?
Yes, Wendy, there is a knowledge gap, but that knowledge gap is not even limited to single parenting. I mean, you started the academy, and I mean, reading your books, even for me, I was, underlining and, highlighting. Many of us were not taught that parenting should be intentional. So we didn't grow up. Our parents responded to things as they happened, and they just God helped them. But it doesn't mean that we turned out right. So many people assume that they are parenting the way their parents parented. And so it's the reason why actually single parents try to become mother and father automatically. They just want to, they want to feel, they tell you, no, I am mother, I am father, I've become like a man. But it's not possible. It's not possible for one person to be two people. It's just not physiologically possible. So I think there is a knowledge gap, but I also think that our society hasn't helped us in terms of the shame. So even when I first advertised there, I had so many people register. As soon as I said it would be on Zoom, it would be live, blah, blah, it wasn't going to be one-on-one, it was a class, people dropped out. So I find that people are not even willing to identify themselves as single parents and to say, I need help. But you do need help. I think that like I talked about finances, Wendy, one of the things that parents do is to continue to try to make the children not miss the other parents. It's born out of revenge. It's not born out of a good place. So most times, like, you are here, you are not here. The children can still have a good life. It's just silly because you're making someone determine your own behavior, and you cannot meet up. It doesn't matter, how well you earn. When you come back home, when there are two parents, for example, when you come back home, maybe one parent is doing homework, the other is cooking. When it's only you, you will choose homework or cooking. And so you may buy bread and side coming back because you know that there's homework waiting for you. So the reality is that when you are parenting alone, you are parenting alone. And people just don't get it.
Okay, so I get this part, and I know that is one thing that we deal with a lot in the academy. The fact that we are not true to ourselves. The fact that I think is one of the major things that is hindering the journey of parents. The fact that we're looking at ourselves constantly and not saying that these things are true. So I had a conversation with a father who is supposed to speak at our upcoming Fathers Conference in June. And, we were talking about parenting alone. And he said something. He said, because I'm bringing this up because of the last part that you took. You were saying, yes, you're parenting alone, but you can't be those two people. So you will need to find, because by God's design, it was designed that you must parent the two people will need to parent the child. So you will need to find someone to fill in this gap. So I want to ask, how do you go about this? Because there's a lot that happens now where people don't even know who, and how do you find that person that can help become that model to your child? And you said something, that person must be somebody you're not emotionally connected to. So it can be an uncle, it can be a close friend. That's what you're trying to say. So what are the criteria? As in, how do you begin to find this person that should fill in this gap?
So, well, it can be an uncle, Wendy. So when I talk about emotional connection, I'm talking about dating, like having a romantic link, not necessarily just the emotion. Yes. So it can be like, for me, I had a child at 19. My brothers were all his fathers, and they're still very close to him, So uncles can be that model, but only probably when they're old enough. So maybe my own brothers were more like uncles and elder brothers, but they modeled the right way. They modeled hard work. They modeled discipline. They modeled doing right. They modeled speaking right. So I didn't need to worry too much about that. But one of the ways that I share on the academy to find models is actually in school. Which children among your children's friends do you find that their behavior is good and reasonable? And you might need to open up your home. That's another thing that single parents don't recognize. For me, it was an intentional opening up of my home to allow children to come in so that I could see children that had values and then go all out to become friends with those families so that my own child could go and visit and spend time with those families. The time that he would spend there, they would do roster, for example, and he will be part of the roster. Now, he was alone in my house, so there's no roster now. He's doing everything. But he learned siblingship. He learned roster. He learned taking responsibility. In fact, it's one of those homes where he started driving their father before his children, his own biological children. When they all started driving, he would call and say, "Is Okwe free? Can he?" Oh, sorry, I called his name. He's okay. Can he please come and take me somewhere? Because I had his own thing. So they became so close. The sonship. It took modeling to another level. I didn't need to formally say, "Excuse me, sir and ma, you are modeling parenting for my son." I just needed to push him constantly into that fold. And whatever discipline they meted out, that was it. Whatever happened there, I never asked. I never made any, I just allowed him. So single parents also need to let go, Wendy. They need to let go. So one of the ways I've advised in the academy is to actually look for children who are modeling the character that you would like to see. Then you start to engage with their parents so that you can find 2-parent homes where your child can go and start to. And you see, if your child is negative, if you already tell the child that things are really bad, single parents is negative, then the child is going to go and start feeling jealous. Not jealousy or any of those other kinds of feelings, so that when the child goes to that home, the child is not going there thinking, "Oh, for me, they sent me here." The child is going there with love, and with warmth. And this was him about my own child. He was warm, he was loving, it was easy to have him over. I didn't put in him a sense of, oh, something is missing, and so, I need to be bad, so yeah.
In fact, this is so apt. Having the privilege of knowing Coach Eyitayo, I know that Coach Eyitayo had been, a single parent at 19 and had raised an awesome son. That particular son is one of the people that we all want to, when you see her son, we all wish that you have a son like that. Every single one of us that are close to that setting, we all come and say, oh, wow, I just wish that, I have a son like this. Are there things that, I'm sure that there are a lot of these things that you have been able to work through, because I like, apart from saying, oh, I'm a psychologist, I'm a life coach, I'm a this, I'm a that, the experience speaks more to it. You said something so clearly. When I started parenting alone, there were some things that I didn't do well, and I have come to recognize now by studying more to say, yes, these are the things that I could have done better. But that didn't remove the fact that you raised an awesome human. Okay, so of course, I usually say that instead of trying to walk through your own experience, why not gather the experience of the person who have walked it and then convert those 18 years to like 1 year?
Exactly.
So if you're a single parent, questions, I would like to say that the Single Parenting Academy is where you need to be. I don't deal with single parents. So if you have a peculiarity, not that I don't deal with single parents now, don't get me wrong, but if you have a peculiarity of parenting alone, there are some principles that you will need to learn. That's the truth. And, you can't take that away. Parenting is a skill that must be learned. So for every situation you find yourself, you will need to find in that skill. I like what Tosin said here. She said, I was brought up by a single parent. Now I understand why my dad behaved and sometimes behaves the way he does. I really wished he was here to listen to this. Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much, Tosin. Ijoma says, oh, she's not a single parent, but she's here. Hadiza says, I'm happy to be here. I'm learning. I'm a single parent. Hadiza is one of my one of my oldest clients. I know that Hadiza parents alone. Hadiza, you might want to connect with Coach Eyitayo. I tell you, there's so much to learn. And then we have a question here by Panigo. He says, acting as father and mother is not easy. How do I handle my daughter of 11 years old when she starts seeing her period? Back to you, ma'am.
Okay, so this is one of the reasons why modeling is key and finding parenting models is important. But you also now have to learn to have, so one of the reasons we don't have discussions about sex, anything sexual, is our society, Wendy. Now, because I was parenting a boy, I mean 3 boys, so I had to tell myself that inhibition, I throw you out. I would rather kill inhibition than have a child that is maladjusted. And so I have all the discussions with my children. We don't shirk the discussions. So what I want to say is that he needs to get comfortable with the fact that she's a woman and she's going to start seeing her period. And a period is a physiological thing. It's not a sexual thing. It's not. It's actually a physiological thing. It's actually a physiological thing. And if you deal with it from a scientific physiological perspective, you also help children get comfortable with their bodies. So, because I talk to my children, we talk, Wendy, we talk, we have those deep conversations. So I have already built, but that first time, with that first boy, I remember the first day I went to wake him and I realized that, oh dear, the boy is waking up with an erection because he's a boy. Maybe it was a little easier. I had 3 brothers, growing up. So maybe, it was easier for me. But I had to sit him down and now have a conversation about puberty and all that. And then I now had a discussion with my 2 immediate younger brothers. I said, you know what? I need you guys to find time, engage this boy, and please discuss puberty, what happens in a man's body. So I have discussed it. but I could see in his eyes, like this kind, okay. Like, how did you know? You know, I could see in his eyes. Like, thank you. I hear you. But you're a woman. You know, that. So I had to talk to my brothers. And please, can you have these important conversations? Until now, my brothers know where he is, who it was happening more than I do. You know, so and then they banter. I remember when I said I want to force him to start calling them uncle. The brothers themselves fought me. I said, who sent you? What is the problem? You know, because it's that close, they were like brothers. So he would have to, the person who has a daughter, he would have to, if he doesn't have a sister who has that conversation, he has to have a friend, you know, somebody who understands how to have the right conversation. Otherwise, get a life coach for the girl. Get a team coach for the girl, because the team coach will have the correct conversation with her, and she will. And I mean, my son has now had a coach for 3 years or so, so they would have consistent conversations. Now I'm no longer even paying. I just noticed that they're having conversations all the time. He does some work, he sends pictures, he sends to his life coach. So the life coach has become like a big brother, like a father figure, like a, you know, so get a life coach for the child and try and engage. There are many teen coaches who don't mind, you know, giving this. So get help. Single parents, it takes a whole village to raise a child, so get help.
I like that part. It takes a whole village to raise a child, get help. You know, many times people think that people actually feel guilty getting help. So I've seen that a lot of parents in Nigeria think that when you ask for help, it means that you're incompetent. I want to say this again and again. The ability to ask for help on your journey means that you're emotionally stable. In fact, it's emotionally instability that causes you to think that you do not need help. So the moment you begin to tell yourself that you don't need help, there's a challenge. You need to sit back and begin to ask, am I having learned helplessness? I'm sure Coach Jenikai will not want to enter that part now. You know, I told you that the grounded psychologist, even before, you know, she started life coaching, I told you she did a degree as a psychologist, and you know, sometimes I have some conversations with her. By the way, this is my big sister, so I'm sure if you follow me, you will know that this is family. So it's important to note that, you know, some of these things are, you know, really a big deal. I'm so sorry, ma. The questions are pouring in like water, so we are going to it on. All right. So Hadiza is saying that these issues discussed here are not just for single parents. One can be living with a partner, but the income is just one-sided. So you have guilt, anger, and nothing sets in. How do you handle this, ma? Because I know that this is a very, you know, valid pain point.
Oh yes. Oh yes, I see it a lot, Wendy, and it's unfortunate in our society. Parents take out a lot of their anger on their children. The parent needs to find help. The parent needs to take responsibility. And then the question I ask is, if you are in a relationship that gets you angry, you have guilt, you have shame, there's no sense in not seeking therapy for that relationship. So that relationship needs help. And you see, people frown on the concept of separation, but I have learned that separation is one of the best ways to get sanity back. When the person is not physically there, you are able to find help, you're able to come to terms, you're able to sit down and say, okay, we didn't do this right, can we do it right now? But what Nigerians, as a society, what we want is to pretend. You will see that the same people that are telling you that they need help will go on Facebook and say, oh, I can't live without you. Yeah. You know, I don't get it. So living your truth is important. It's very, very important. And if you live a lie, nobody can help you. Some people believe the lie that they tell themselves. They actually believe those lies they tell them. So my question is, if a relationship is so negative, why have you not sought help? And if you haven't sought help, then you can't complain. If the relationship is that negative and you don't seek help, then just be ready, because those children are going to come out very negative. It's not a curse, it is just a progressive outcome. Children who watch negativity, quarrels, anger, all that, they will model after what they see. they will model everything they're saying. You're just creating a boy who is irresponsible, a girl who thinks that shouting is the way to solve problems, a girl who thinks that sending people on a guilt trip is okay. So you're messing up the next generation, really. That's what we're doing.
Interesting. You know, one of the things that is very profound about parenting in our client is that we want to hide some things, you know. So where we started a course called Healing from Parenting Hurt. And since we started talking about parenting hurt, I've had lots of parents reach out to me to say, this is what I went through in the hands of my parents. We don't like to say these things out. So we prefer to hide it. We prefer to become hypocritical about it. I keep saying that the fact that we raise issues of what has been done to us does not mean we don't love our parents. So people keep saying, you say it like these people they did it out of love. Nobody is saying it wasn't done out of love. We're saying that these things that were done were hurting. And until we come in terms with those things, these things don't change. So I think, you know, from what you're saying, from your response, you know, for Gina, it's obvious that people don't. We were raised to become hypocrites. So we naturally love the hypocritical work. We naturally are not true to ourselves, and I think it's a place to start from. Really, it's a place to start from. So yes, these issues, like Coach Eita said, are not issues of single parenting, yes, alone. These issues also exist in parenting by both parents, by both partners. But the moment you begin to find yourself in such a toxic situation where you're parenting with the other partner and you still feel this guilt, anger, curses, then there's something wrong that you need to deal with. And you need to be able to deal with that. All right, so Tosin says, please, how can I get a female model for myself? I really need one as a child who was brought up by a single dad. Although I'm an adult now, I feel I still have some guilt against my dad.
So this wouldn't start from just modeling. This requires a little bit of therapy. It requires forgiveness and healing. So that's another thing. You see, you cannot, if you have a wound and you just put brown skin colored powder and you rub it on it, it doesn't heal the wound on the inside. From the outside, it looks nice. It looks really like the skin, but on the inside, the wound is festering. So getting a model is like putting that brown colored powder on the skin. In this particular situation, what is required is healing. So you actually need to go to therapy and forgive. You need to forgive your dad, and you need to come to a place of being healed. Then you now look for a model to go forward with. So it's like, you need to fix the past so that you can move forward. Otherwise, no matter how far you move, it's like moving 2 steps forward and then 10 steps back. So that would be my counsel.
Awesome. Tosin, you might want to reach out to Tayo to actually look at some of these things that you've shared. One of the things that I say is that parenting characteristics are reflective. And even though this has been done to you by your dad, parenting yourself, some of these things that have been projected on you will also project them on your own children. Sometimes we don't want to, but unfortunately, many times we find ourselves in those places. If you do not deal with some of these things, they will come haunting you, because that's what you know and that's how you know to live. So when you do not, we think usually that our past is something we need to cut by. But like Coach said, you need to deal with this past and then bring it forward before you can now say, okay, yes, I've dealt with my past, then I need to now move on with this. This is really, really very important. And then this takes me to a question that I have, Ma. You were sharing on being able to bring single parents being able to raise, because somebody, put up a question that actually reminded me of that. Single parents being able to raise their children and then discipline them the way they should. Let me find that comment. You know, um,
Addicted to his phone.
yes, he said, "How should I deal with my son who is addicted to his phone?" That's what Karen is asking. So I'm asking, is there those, you were saying something about guilt that follows discipline, where you either
Yes,
want to be so hard or you want
yes.
to, just let things go by. What is the
Mhm.
best approach to dealing with this?
So what I first say is that discipline cannot be done in isolation. So you can't take
Mm,
one aspect and say, "Oh, I just want to," because then I start to ask, "Are you upset at the phone?" So we need to get this in context. So I'm being careful about responding now. When you say addicted to his phone, so I'll give okay. Let me hold on. Let me just pause. Now, when we were growing up, I don't know if it happened to other people. My mother believed that if you were playing and laughing, it meant that you didn't have work. And so she would look for something for you to do. One of which was to wet egusi and give us to be shelling because we used to have farms. So we just just because she felt so I'm just being careful.
mm,
Times have changed, and being on the phone screen in itself has to be taken within the context of what else is going on. Is it that he's on a phone screen when he's supposed to be doing something else? Is it that he's on
mhm,
a phone screen for too many hours? Have you defined how many hours of screen time they should have? So we can't take
mhm,
one event in isolation. So I'm being careful about answering a question in isolation. For every
mm,
behavior, there are enabling factors. So what are the
mm,
enabling factors? Right now there's COVID, there's lockdown. So like me, there was no TV Monday to Friday in my house. I have had to relax that and put TVs from 4 p.m. Monday to Friday because they're stuck inside the house. They've been stuck here for 2 months. It's unrealistic, therefore, to continue to enforce that there should be no TV for 5 days in a week. I mean, they would start to quarrel. So let's take the question. I think that we can take this question offline, Wendy, if it's okay. And then this
mm,
person can reach out to me and then we can deal with it. But it will be very dangerous to take that, I'm still a psychologist. It's dangerous to answer the question in isolation. So
mm.
when you say addiction, what do you mean? What does it entail? What does it bring out? What behavior surrounds it? What enables it? What can you change so that that addiction, in quotes, will be dealt with?
Amazing. There was just one line, fantastic line that I picked. In every behavior, there is an enabling factor, and I think that's what is key in dealing with this. In every behavior, there's an enabling factor. So I have had teenagers, come to me. Their parents say, "Oh, the teenager is always reading on their pads," and I remember that growing up, I was addicted to books. So I could be said to be that child who was addicted to James Hadley Chase, Miss Mills and Boone, name it, the Pacesetters, the African authors, and all that. It's an addiction. I would be in the toilet with a book, reading, while cooking was going on. My parents felt I was just lazy in the kitchen, but it's okay, it's fine. He pays the bills. But so I just read. So I think it's very key, and which is also one of the reasons, coach, that I don't like answering some things off social media. Some people bring some questions and say, "Oh, coach, you need to answer this," and I say this is beyond the social media banter.
Yeah,
There might be so much more
yeah.
beneath this particular character. Then I'd like to move as we conclude to ask that, are there peculiar things that happen to children of people who are single parents? Are there expectations, from the society where we are? Are there things in particular that, you say that when you see that this person must have been raised by a single parent? I say this because I've heard in my culture where people say things like, women don't raise boys. Where people say things like, that person must have been raised by a woman. Is there something to it? Is there a thing? I would like you to throw more light on that, ma'am.
Well, actually, because children learn by modeling, there is some kind of scientific basis for that. If the only model they had was a mother, and if we're talking about, so we're talking about boys in relation to girls now, but also girls in relation to fathers. So I mean, somebody just asked about dealing with his daughter. So it's the same thing also for men. So there is the modeling. So a child that's raised by a man might be very comfortable, changing light bulbs, fixing things in the house because that's what the dad modeled. Might be very uncomfortable cooking, even though it's a girl, because her father probably had a help who used to do the cooking or had a cook. Or well, some men don't cook. I'm just using a light, so don't take me too seriously. I'm using light examples. But I'm trying to say that modeling plays a huge role in parenting. And so unless the parent is very connected with very emotionally intelligent and very connected with themselves and their parenting, they will raise children who will fit into society. Not that they are bad, but they will not fit society's roles. I'll give you another example. Most men who are raised by single mothers would be pleasant to women, and therefore they'll be liable to be abused by women.
Wow.
Because they're raised by a single mother, they have that affection, that feeling of what, I don't know the word to call it, but a feeling of owing, the women folk. So they kind of, in their minds, they picture every woman as their mother. And so they get hurt. They get hurt over and over again because every woman is not their mother. And, the women know say. And it also annoys the women that he becomes like a pushover. But that comes from raising a mother, particularly when the mother was really, hard. So single mothers in particular, we think that the harder we are on the boys, the better they turn out, but that's not true. The harder we are, the more controlling we are on them, the more they're looking for a controlling wife. And then the single mother is upset because the son went and married somebody who is controlling him and he doesn't seem to be thinking. Do you see how it's a vicious cycle? So fix your parents now to protect the next generation. For this our generation, wow, Wendy, there's a lot. I cringe when people say, oh, my parents did. And even the concept of they did this out of love, I question it. I'm sorry. You cannot love somebody. It is not love. It's some kind of obsession, some kind of control. It is not love. You cannot love somebody and cut the person's body, put pepper inside. No.
Not at all.
You can call it obsession. You can call it need for control. You can call it guilt. Whatever. Please, not love. Love, according to the Bible, believes all things, hopes all things, is pure, does not envy. So the definitions that are given to us do not include causing harm, previous bodily harm to the person that should. No. Nobody should ever find that as love. Yes, they parented us with the knowledge that they had, and it was limited time, but that doesn't make it love. No, it doesn't. Before you just stop me, Wendy, I just want to touch on another thing that parents do.
Please go ahead, ma'am.
Our society that is kind of, children don't owe you now. They don't owe you in 50 years. They don't owe you in 100 years' time. Your children never owe you. Get off the high horse. Get off it. Because what we do is say things like, I used my one wrapper to train you. So you owe, excuse me. You chose to use your one wrapper. You could have given the child up for adoption. You chose to use your one wrapper. The child. It's your child. So the child does not owe you, please. Even their good behavior. You can imagine a pregnant teenager and the mother is probably saying, now you brought shame to us. She is walking around with a swollen belly and you can think about your own shame. There's something wrong with you. There's something seriously psychologically wrong with you. Because you are not thinking about the fact that this girl is young, should not be pregnant, is working, and you are still sending her to go and fetch water, to go and sell for you, to go and all you are thinking about is see how you have brought shame to us. That phrase alarm bells should ring in your mind when you use phrases like "you are shaming me," "you are bringing shame to me." That is guilt tripping, and parents, please move away from it. Get help, please. You need therapy. Get help.
Thank you so much, Ma. 2 years ago when we started the Intentional Parent Academy, I started from the point of the things that were done to us were not born out of love, really, that they were born out of ignorance. And when you go to the court of
Yeah.
law, the person who lacked knowledge and the person who forgot, according to one of my mentors, Taiwo, both the person who lacks knowledge and the person who forgot the knowledge that they have, they are both guilty of the same offense, and that they will stand the consequences of the same offense. So it doesn't matter. So you can have all this knowledge, you don't implement it, you forgot. I forgot that thing that Coach Eitayo said that time, and you do the same thing. The consequences are the same. They are not different. I am ignorant of many of the times when I speak in the group, I say that ignorance is bliss. And if you have more questions, you can send in more questions as we round up. I say that ignorance is bliss. People live in ignorance, and they just say all sorts of things, and it's just so interesting and funny as well. Because I have come to the point where, in fact, I got to that point so many years ago, where I realized that the way we were raised, it just can't work. Not even, people say, but we survived it. The question I usually ask is, did we really survive it? Did we really survive it?
The society is messed up now because we didn't.
Oh yes, but a lot of marriages are going off, a lot of single parenting, a lot of I say, but that's a ripple effect of whatever it is, whatever seed it is that our parents had sown. So what we are just seeing is a multiplication. Say our parents stayed in abusive marriages, stayed in it didn't do so much of a good. That's the truth of the matter. We have just replicated more people who are now doing, more of those things. So I think that, parents should actually learn to begin to unlearn some of these things. And the only way that we can actually begin to unlearn some of these things is to seek help, get knowledge. If you're parenting alone, learn how to parent alone. There are psychological problems. In fact, I like the way Coach answered that question at the end. She said, the truth is, if you parent alone, there are some things that people will be able to see. So how do you mitigate? You need to start from the point of knowledge. Then you parent from there. How do you mitigate some of these things that have come, that that is visible, that can be visible? How do you make them, help the child? Usually, we make parenting about the children, about our ego. And I say that if you must parent well, then you must squash parenting ego. It is something that is very good. Children do something. The first thing that comes to mind is, what will people say? How will people look at me?
I know.
Coach, I remember that a friend was going to bring her children to my house. And one of the things that she said was, she told the children, when you get there, my friend is a parent coach. Oh, my children are well behaved and all that. When you get there, you need to behave a certain way. You need to sit on your place. So I noticed that when the children came in, they were quiet. Into my house have become quiet. That's strange. There were lots of toys. There's a playground. And I was wondering, why you guys not going outside? Why you guys not entering the room? They were just looking at me. The woman, the woman smiled sheepishly, like, no, they're just, trying to. I said, wait, excuse me, did your mother tell you that I don't play in my house? And then the children said, no, we just needed to be. I said, will you stand up from there? And so we constantly want to do the same thing. I had to practically chase them outside. And then I started talking with her. She said, no, that she just felt that maybe, my home is going to be one set. I said, have I ever projected perfection, to the outside world? Never. For everything I preach, I say that your children can never be perfect. You think my children don't fight? Hey, in fact, there's one advert that they put up on DSTV about those two boys on coronavirus, the boy and the girl, where the boy was telling the girl, would you go outside? Coronavirus is outside. The boy said, In fact, my husband says that is our twin children. that the both of them could have been used to do that. Anytime they show it, we will have the video. The point is, every parent deals with issues. And the fact that you sit back and just feel that I cannot, I need to, my children need to be a certain way because I'm a single parent. I need to prove a point to people. The same thing that I also have. People think, oh, because I'm a parent coach, and there's something that my children, a point that my children need to prove. No, they just need to be there. I just need to guide, and you said at the last point where you said our children don't owe us anything. We were raised by people who thought we owed them. No, we don't owe them. And, we also need to begin to raise, some kind of unlearning in us to tell ourselves that we do not own our children also. And I think that is that, we begin to deal with a lot as regards, parenting. And I think that there's a peculiarity to parenting alone. The guilt that comes up from the society. Coach Eita run a single parenting academy. When that academy took off and I learned about it, I was excited because I know that parenting alone comes with a lot of issues. And some of those issues are not our common pick up the shelf kind of issue and just go off. Some of the issues we shared here were just on the peripheral level. In that class, you get to understand why you are doing what you're doing and how you can change what you're doing to become a better parent alone. Remember, we are talking about people who are parenting alone. So our questions are here. Let's quickly get through to them, and then we run. So that today is my husband's birthday. I usually don't do anything on his birthday, but he gave me permission to do it. All right. So somebody says, how can I get a mentor or a team coach for my son?
I'll respond to her. I'll send her a message and recommend somebody. I can only recommend people that I know that I've worked with, but exactly. I can recommend somebody for her. Yes.
All right. Awesome. Then we have this. How can I connect with Coach Eitayo? I want to swim in her wealth of knowledge as I move in my single parenting journey to raise a wonderful woman. Virtual hug. How So we're going to be sharing how you can connect with Coach Eitayo. And Coach Eitayo is also going to before we end this session, tell us how if she can connect, you can connect with her. Please, Ma, can you share a bit of the details of the next upcoming Single Parenting Academy classes that are coming?
Interesting, Wendy. Honestly, I didn't expect the kind of responses we've been getting. People are registering. So we're on the second cohort now, and the third cohort starts on the 27th of May. So here's how it runs, and it's really interesting. I think the model is perfect. This is how I modeled it. So parenting alone. So one of the things we do in the academy, first of all, is that you will be paired with somebody that you don't know. With the first class, one of the things we get is that we pair people because there's a lot of assignments along the way. So the academy itself, the core content is 6 sessions, online sessions on Zoom, and we have it every other day. And these sessions teach you different areas, different aspects. After each session, there's an assignment, which you have to go and do with your partner. So you have to be honest. So it's not one of those assignments that you can just go and copy. No, you have to have a conversation, which is why we have that day in between, so that people can have a conversation with someone they don't know. So there's no need to be forming. You can just, hit the nail on the head. And then when we have that session, when we have the sessions, then at the end, so it's actually 8 sessions in all, but only 6 of them are content sessions. The first session is introductory overview. We go through, people tell their stories. 1 or 2 people share their stories about how they got to the academy. I share my story. Then we have 6 content loaded with assignments. The 8th session, the groups now come and present. And by the time they're presenting, there's a parenting plan, there's, learned lessons, there's the immediate low-hanging fruit, things that you can change now, that you don't need to, you don't need therapy, you don't need anything to change. So that's basically how the academy runs.
Okay, ma. So how can people who are parenting alone, get to register for the academy, and how do they get to connect with you?
Okay, so the academy, I sent the link to the academy to Coach Wendy. She will share the link. I don't know where she's going to share it, but she'll share the link, probably on the group, Abby. She'll share the link to the academy. Please register and then please make payment. The academy is 8,300. Don't ask me about the 300 on top, but I tried to only transfer the cost of actually running the academy to the attendees. So the academy is 8,300. You need to register online though. You have to register. If you don't register, we will not let you into class. When you register and you make payment, you send an SMS to 0808-756-0008. And I think that Coach Wendy is going to type it at some point. And then we'll send you an SMS confirmation and you get the link before every class. You get the link and you attend the class. The class is hold at 8 p.m. and during weekdays. So please, prepare for it runs for just a little over 2 weeks if we do every other day. And sometimes we skip Sundays because people request. But if we run every other day, it runs for about 2 weeks in all. So just prepare yourself for 2 weeks of awesomeness. And then after the academy, there's a support group, which the parents are now, included in, where we continue to have the conversation. I think it's important for us to start to now deal with the issues as they come up. So before it becomes a hydra-headed monster, you can come to the group and say, help, this has happened, but this led to it and this led to it. And everybody's like, oh, remember this, remember that. And how did you do this assignment? And quite interesting, really. So that's it, basically. And then I'm Eitayo Iyotim on Facebook. Now, I've maxed out my friends, but I don't allow followers. So what I'm going to do is for every request I get from the attendees here, I'm going to take out one of the people that I don't engage with, and I'm going to put somebody in. But yes, my name is Eitayo Iyotim on Facebook. I'm Eitayo Inspires on Instagram as well. Thank you, Wendy.
All right. Thank you so much, Ma. I've also shared the registration link in the comment section. If you can see my comments, I'm sure you will see that link, but I will still share it, again in the group for every single parent who wants to work on this journey of single parenting with Coach Eitayo. I'm so grateful having you here, ma'am. It's such an honor having this conversation. Is so valid. Of course, we know that we are going to be calling you again and again to talk about Single Parenting Academy. And I know that this has just been so refreshing a conversation. It's just like I'm waking up, talking about parenting gives me one kind of superpower, just like I'm waking up, and I'm just having some kind of feel of goodness. And this was just a valid conversation. Like I said from the beginning, I don't think only single parents should listen to this. I think every parent should listen to this conversation and also prepare themselves just in case they find themselves having to parent alone. I'm sure that by the time that you became a single parent at 19, nothing prepared your own parents to parent a child who had become a single parent. There are so many things to consider, as regards parenting. Every time that I talk about it, I talk about planning. I talk about getting ready. I was talking to a drug addiction coach, and I said I wanted to do a session in knowing how to deal with a child who has been addicted to drugs. And then she said to me, "Do you have any child?" I said, "No, I want the knowledge. I like to get myself. Nobody prays that this thing comes, but you know what? The truth remains that we cannot. God forbid is not a plan. God forbid, it's not that my words. Anywhere you hear it, you know that I said it. God forbid is not a parenting plan. It's not a parenting plan. You need to put plans. It's the same thing with marriage. It's the same thing with our finances. When my husband is a marriage coach, and when he talks about planning in marriage, sometimes there are some things he considers as regards planning. I'm like, huh? When he was talking about it in his book, he talked about fidelity plan. In fact, it was in that conversation that we, talked about, how you actually can guard yourself your emotions,
Yeah.
and how to walk and, build a plan for faithfulness. It does not come on you. So nothing actually just falls on you. Nothing actually falls on you. Yeah, Hadiza is asking for your number, coach, so that we can. Hadiza, I'm also going to make coach's number public, and I'm sure that in that this thing that we shared, that her details, her number is there on the group where she shared on. Let me also still copy again and send all her contact details, her Facebook, and I also mentioned that she runs an inspiring session for women. In fact, she's my go-to women everything. All right. So I've shared coaches' contacts in case that you want my contact. Our contacts are all here, and then we take it from there. If you want to reach out to her and you also find it difficult, I'm sure I've also sent quite a number of people to Coach Enita in the past. So, in your last words, ma, what would you like to say to every person parenting alone?
Let me start by saying thank you, Coach Wendy, for all the people that you sent to me. Yes, a lot of work. And they just come and say, Coach Wendy told me I should get in touch with you. I'm like, yes, she does that. All right. What I want to say to single parents is that it needn't be negative. You can parent successfully alone and have amazing children and amazing outcomes and be a very happy person. People always ask me, are you really this happy? You have no idea. Sometimes I don't know what excites. I am always excited, so yes. So I know God. So that also, you have to have a spiritual backup. So I have a relationship with God. But again, I have peace. I have serenity. So seek peace, seek serenity. People have offended you, let go. They offended you based on their understanding of how they could behave. Don't let them hold you back. So I want to say that you can still do it. You can do it. You can do it. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This has been an inspiring session, and I think I'm going to come back to this session, watch it again. I'm a long life learner. I do book, and as you were talking, I do book and pen. In fact, while you were talking, the governor passed somewhere and made one noise. I did like this. Can't you see I'm listening? So please, let us still roll back on this session again and catch up with the things that have been said and begin to internalize them. Thank you so much for coming again and again, ma'am. And like I said, just know that we will be calling you back again for this session.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm so honored to have
you.
you. Such a great privilege.
Thank you.
When you have
Thank
access to all of the big people, you don't just understand what it means. You just walk in and was in and just say, hey, just come and speak. I'm sure even people following do not understand what that means. But yes, we get there. We are favored like that. And we are grateful to God for that. Thank you so much, ma. I am so honored. And may God honor you also. Thank you for all you do. And do have a good day. And thank you to everybody who joined us. It was just a wonderful conversation with you all. See you again on our next session, which will be the Tuesday question and answer by 2 p.m. Thank you again, and do have a wonderful weekend.